Verses 15 to 20. Never was any treaty carried on with better management, nor brought to a better issue, than this of Joshua with the people, to engage them to serve God. The manner of his dealing with them shows him to have been in earnest, and that his heart was much upon it, to leave them under all possible obligations to cleave to him, particularly the obligation of a choice and of a covenant. Would it be any obligation upon them if they made the service of God their choice? He here puts them to their choice, not as if it were antecedently indifferent whether they served God or nor, or as if they were at liberty to refuse his service, but because it would have a great influence upon their perseverance in religion if they embraced it with the reason of men and with the resolution of men. These two things he here brings them to. He brings them to embrace their religion rationally and intelligently, for it is a reasonable service. The will of man is apt to glory in its native liberty, and, in a jealousy for the honor of this, adheres with most pleasure to that which is its own choice and is not imposed upon it. Therefore it is God's will that this service should be, not our chance, or a force upon us, but our choice. Accordingly, Joshua fairly puts the matter to their choice, v. 15. He proposes the candidates that stand for the election. The Lord, Jehovah, on one side, and on the other side either the gods of their ancestors, which would pretend to recommend themselves to those that were fond of antiquity, and that which was received by tradition from their fathers, or the gods of their neighbors, the Amorites, in whose land they dwelt, which would insinuate themselves into the affections of those that were complaisant and fond of good fellowship. He supposes there were those to whom, upon some account or other, it would seem evil to serve the Lord. There are prejudices and objections which some people raise against religion, which, with those that are inclined to the world and the flesh, have great force. It seems evil to them, hard and unreasonable, to be obliged to deny themselves, mortify the flesh, take up their cross, etc. But, being in a state of probation, it is fit there should be some difficulties in the way, else there were no trial. He refers it to themselves. Choose you whom you will serve, choose this day, now that the matter is laid thus plainly before you, speedily bring it to a head, and do not stand hesitating. Elijah, long after this, referred the decision of the controversy between Jehovah and Baal to the consciences of those with whom he was treating. Joshua's putting the matter here to this issue plainly intimates two things. First, that it is the will of God we should every one of us make religion our serious and deliberate choice. Let us state the matter impartially to ourselves, weigh things in an even balance, and then determine for that which we find to be really true and good. Let us resolve upon a life of serious godliness, not merely because we know no other way, but because really, upon search, we find no better. Secondly, that religion has so much self-evident reason and righteousness on its side that it may safely be referred to every man that allows himself a free thought either to choose or refuse it, for the merits of the cause are so plain that no considerate man can do otherwise but choose it. The case is so clear that it determines itself. Perhaps Joshua designed, by putting them to their choice, thus to try if there were any among them who, upon so fair an occasion given, would show a coolness and indifference towards the service of God, whether they would desire time to consider and consult their friends before they gave in an answer, and if any such should appear he might set a mark upon them, and warn the rest to avoid them. He directs their choice in this matter by an open declaration of his own resolutions. But as for me and my house, whatever you do, we will serve the Lord, and I hope you will all be of the same mind. Here he resolves, first, for himself, as for me, I will serve the Lord. Note, the service of God is nothing below the greatest of men. It is so far from being a diminution and disparagement to princes and those of the first rank to be religious that it is their greatest honor, and adds the brightest crown of glory to them. Observe how positive he is, I will serve God. It is no abridgment of our liberty to bind ourselves with a bond to God. Secondly, for his house, that is, his family, his children and servants, such as were immediately under his eye and care, his inspection and influence. Joshua was a ruler, a judge in Israel, yet he did not make his necessary application to public affairs an excuse for the neglect of family religion. Those that have the charge of many families, as magistrates and ministers, must take special care of their own. 1 Tim 3:4, 5 I and my house will serve God. Not my house, without me. He would not engage them to that work which he would not set his own hand to. As some who would have their children and servants good, but will not be so themselves, that is, they would have them go to heaven, but intend to go to hell themselves. Not I, without my house. He supposes he might be forsaken by his people, but in his house, where his authority was greater and more immediate, there he would overrule. Note, when we cannot bring as many as we would to the service of God, we must bring as many as we can, and extend our endeavors to the utmost sphere of our activity. If we cannot reform the land, let us put away iniquity far from our own tabernacle. First I, and then my house. Note, those that lead and rule in other things should be first in the service of God, and go before in the best things. Thirdly, he resolves to do this whatever others did. Though all the families of Israel should revolt from God, and serve idols, yet Joshua and his family will steadfastly adhere to the God of Israel. Note, those that resolve to serve God must not mind being singular in it, nor be drawn by the crowd to forsake his service. Those that are bound for heaven must be willing to swim against the stream, and must not do as the most do, but as the best do. The matter being thus put to their choice, they immediately determine it by a free, rational, and intelligent declaration, for the God of Israel, against all competitors whatsoever, v. 16:18. They concur with Joshua in his resolution, being influenced by the example of so great a man, who had been so great a blessing to them, v. 18. We also will serve the Lord. See how much good great men might do, if they were but zealous in religion, by their influence on their inferiors. They startle at the thought of apostatizing from God, v. 16. God forbid. The word intimates the greatest dread and detestation imaginable. Far be it from us, that we, or ours should ever forsake the Lord to serve other gods. We must be perfectly lost to all sense of justice, gratitude, and honor, ere we can harbor the least thought of such a thing. Thus must our hearts rise against all temptations to desert the service of God. Get thee behind me, Satan. They give very substantial reasons for their choice, to show that they did not make it purely in compliance to Joshua, but from a full conviction of the reasonableness and equity of it. They make this choice for, and in consideration, first, of the many great and very kind things God had done for them, bringing them out of Egypt through the wilderness into Canaan, v. 17:18. Thus they repeat to themselves Joshua's sermon, and then express their sincere compliance with the intentions of it. Secondly, of the relation they stood in to God, and his covenant with them, we will serve the Lord, v. 18, for he is our God, who has graciously engaged himself by promise to us, and to whom we have by solemn vow engaged ourselves. 2. He brings them to embrace their religion resolutely, and to express a full purpose of heart to cleave to the Lord. Now that he has them in a good mind, he follows his blow, and drives the nail to the head, that it might, if possible, be a nail in a sure place. Fast find. In order to this he sets before them the difficulties of religion, and that in it which might be thought discouraging, v. 19:20. You cannot serve the Lord, for he is a holy God, or, as it is in the Hebrew, he is the holy gods, intimating the mystery of the Trinity, 3 in 1, holy, 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 Holy Father, Holy Son, Holy Spirit. He will not forgive. And, if you forsake him, he will do you hurt. Certainly Joshua does not intend hereby to deter them from the service of God as impracticable and dangerous. But, 1. He perhaps intends to represent here the suggestions of seducers, who tempted Israel from their God, and from the service of him, with such insinuations as these, that he was a hard master, his work impossible to be done, and he not to be pleased, and, if displeased, implacable and revengeful, that he would confine their respects to himself only, and would not suffer them to show the least kindness for any other, and that herein he was very unlike the gods of the nations, which were easy, and neither holy nor jealous. It is probable that this was then commonly objected against the Jewish religion, as it has all along been the artifice of Satan ever since he tempted our first parents thus to misrepresent God and his laws, as harsh and severe, and Joshua by his tone and manner of speaking might make them perceive he intended it as an objection, and would put it to them how they would keep their ground against the force of it. Or, 2. He thus expresses his godly jealousy over them, and his fear concerning them, that, notwithstanding the profession they now made of zeal for God and his service, they would afterwards draw back, and if they did they would find him just and jealous to avenge it. Or, 3. He resolves to let them know the worst of it, and what strict terms they must expect to stand upon with God, that they might sit down and count the cost. You cannot serve the Lord, except you put away all other gods, for he is holy and jealous, and will by no means admit a rival, and therefore you must be very watchful and careful, for it is at your peril if you desert his service, better you had never known it. Thus, though our Master has assured us that his yoke is easy, yet lest, upon the presumption of this, we should grow remiss and careless, he has also told us that the gate is strait, and the way narrow, that leads to life, that we may therefore strive to enter, and not seek only. You cannot serve God and mammon, therefore, if you resolve to serve God, you must renounce all competitors with him. You cannot serve God in your own strength, nor will he forgive your transgressions for any righteousness of your own, but all the seed of Israel must be justified and must glory in the Lord alone as their righteousness and strength. Isa 45:24, 25. They must therefore come off from all confidence in their own sufficiency, else their purposes would be to no purpose. Or, 4. Joshua thus urges on them the seeming discouragements which lay in their way, that he might sharpen their resolutions, and draw from them a promise yet more express and solemn that they would continue faithful to God and their religion. He draws it from them that they might catch at it the more earnestly and hold it the faster.